Thank you, Lori. Good evening, everyone. Good to see everyone. I hope you enjoyed the long weekend. If you had a long weekend with Martin Luther King holiday yesterday, I'm sure some of you had to work, but for those who didn't, I hope you had a good weekend, and it's good to see you tonight. I'm going to go ahead and open up our regular session City Council meeting for the City of North Plains, Tuesday, January 18, 2022 at 7:01 p.m. via Zoom or Hollywood Squares. Lori, roll call, please.
Thank you, Mayor. That one made me chuckle. Councillor Phage.
Here.
Councillor Kindle.
Here.
Councillor Papin.
Here.
Councillor Sheldon.
Present.
Councillor Smith.
Here.
Councillor Martinez is excused tonight, and Mayor Linehan.
Here. Thank you, Lori. So item 4 is our consent agenda. We have a few things on that. One is the resolution 2169, reappointing Jacqueline Hunt to the Economic Development Committee. 2, resolution 2170, extending the community garden lease. C, tonight's agenda. And then D, the January 3rd City Council minutes. Are there any corrections or notations that we should be aware of for the minutes or otherwise? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, we have a motion on the table by Councillor Phage, seconded by Councillor Kindle. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you. Item number 5 is public comment. This is the time that anyone on the call is welcome to speak. Something other than what is on our agenda this evening. Lori, do we have any submissions either on tonight or by email?
I've received nothing prior to tonight's meeting, and there is only staff and council on the call at this time.
Okay, thank you, Lori. Appreciate that. Excuse my dog if you can hear him in the distance. He's rooting around trying to get comfortable back there, so I apologize. It's not me in my stomach growling, I promise. So tonight is staff report night, so this is a great time for all of us to get caught up on what's going on at the city. So up first tonight is Robin. Good to see you, Robin.
Hi, good evening, Mayor, councilors, fellow staff, and Andy. So I included in my report this time some year-end statistics, some things I've been following that I found particularly interesting to track as we went into the pandemic and are kind of starting to come out of it. And I just have to give the staff a lot of credit right now for taking this latest spike in stride and just staying positive and working really hard to make sure we can keep the library doors open. That's our #1 priority right now. We're just kind of staffing at minimum levels so that we don't have a lot of contact with each other, so that, you know, in the case that someone gets sick, we can just keep library service as usual for the community. So I just want to give them a lot of credit for working really hard. And I'm happy to take any questions. I put quite a bit in our report. Happy New Year, and we've started really strong with some great programming and so forth.
I like how you provided some charts, some nice visuals.
Yeah.
The report. That's a nice added feature that I like. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I replaced some of the just charts of or graphs of numbers with those, some of the tables, because I thought it might be a little more interesting and more consumable for you. Eric is actually helping me. He's learning Tableau as one of his goals to start creating some more graphics for you. And I'm interested in what you'd like to see. So you can tell me now or email me about we're kind of revamping the report for you.
I think it might be page 3 of your report where you just list out the counts and the collection, the highlights.
Oh yeah, the highlights from the year.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that
Yeah.
bullet point, that's kind of nice to see. And it gives me a nice reminder like, oh yeah, they did that. And oh yeah, they did that. So I like that piece. So
Oh, good.
yeah. Any other counselors have any questions or comments, feedback for Robin?
No, well, yeah.
Counselor Sheldon and then Counselor Kendall.
Okay, my comments are, yes, I like the charts, the metrics. We can all look at numbers all day and all night. But the charts do a good job of giving us a good graphical display of what's been going on. And obviously 2021. So whatever we can incorporate across that board on a monthly basis would be great to have. I look at these things a lot and kind of digest them. And it's a good, quick overview. And I think the items that you highlighted in the page that the mayor mentioned, I think is helpful too. I think the at a glance stuff is not just reminds us what's going to be happening, but what has happened. And I know that's kind of a year in review, but it's good to have a good sense of what's going on at the library. So I like the format.
Oh, great. So seeing something like that monthly would be helpful, like a little summary.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it doesn't have to be a big impressive summary. Let's just
Sure.
kind of look back and look forward.
Got it.
Counselor Kendall?
Yes, I concur with Russ. On the next page, 19, it's amazing what your library must be doing there and your help, because in 19 it was 78,000, and in 21 it was 62,000. Kind of went down 20 or 30,000 and bounced right back up. So you guys are doing something right, in my opinion. It's only less than a year. It's almost back up to where it was in 2019. So
Yep.
great job.
Thank
Great
you.
job.
Any other comments? I will just have a really quick comment too about tomorrow. I will be joining you at the library board at 7.
Oh, okay.
I saw your
Great.
email. But before that, I am going to, I did sign up for the vision board.
Oh, wonderful.
Forgot to coordinate my calendar. So I stopped in tonight and talked to the guys and told them I'm going to just jump on for about 30 minutes, and then hopefully they've recorded it so that I can go back and listen to it.
Yeah, we'll record it for sure.
So that'll be really fun. And then also, I'm really glad to see Mrs. Emily's award-winning chili with Southern cornbread on Zoom. I think she took home the gold, the silver, and the bronze one year. And so, yeah, I might join that one too, just to get her recipe.
Get the secret recipe, yes, from the North Plains Chili Cook-Off, yeah.
Exactly.
And then the vision board that Mayor Lenahan was referring to is our second program in our new U in 22 series. The first one was the bullet journal that was had a waiting list, and now the vision board's the second one, which also has we increased the attendance amount, and it's I think it's full, so that's great. Yeah, well, we recorded the bullet journal one too, so if you're interested in that, we have that. Well, thank you. We're just happy that we're still at service to the community, and that people are finding us useful in this time, and just happy to serve. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Appreciate it. All right. Up next is Chief Haxton.
Hello, good evening there, Mayor and City Councilors. I'm going to see if I can't share my screen. I know we talked about this. Should be pulling a little summary there. Looks like in December, there was 174 calls for service that the North Plains police officers responded to. And then we already talked about it before a little bit. You know, we participated in the jingle, and we got hit with an organized crime. A group of individuals came and did that early in the month where they stole a vehicle and did some theft from vehicles. Hitting out in the west end of that, and several different cities or municipalities out in the west end. I don't have an update on anything with that criminal group. It's the nice thing is like I said, we didn't get hit a bunch more as much as we did on the first group that did it. I'm hesitant to say, but it's maybe it's because of some of the efforts we've made to have people lock doors and not leave valuables in the car. There were some, but not nearly as many, and that's a small win, or at least a plus. Looking at the stats, even though our calls look like they were down, we're still writing more reports. And then you can see there the difference between North Plains and the North Plains contract deputies. Again, I think we're just, in general, we're writing more reports. And then, of course, it's the end of the quarter, so I put the quarterly stats in there to compare them. We're right on track with the other quarters. These just stats wise for North Plains. As we scroll down or scroll up, however you want to look at it, disregard. I know Annie laughed at me and caught I didn't change the quarter at the top, but as you can see, the dates for the time of day of when the crimes were occurring is all accurate there. As I joked with him, it was kind of like on my staff reports or updates, it's like, where's Waldo? Somewhere there's a mistake, you just have to find it. But looking at the time of day, pretty much standard from 7 o'clock to 2200. That's the time of day in the last quarter where we have the vast majority of our calls. And again, that's pretty much where it's been all year. So as we scroll past that, the last thing I threw in the packet there was the 6-month crime map. So that's kind of what it looks like where the crimes are occurring. The biggest takeaway is, and it's not going to be a shock to anybody, that looks like the crashes happened there closest to Glencoe, right there on near Highland Court. That's kind of one of our busiest intersections. So, but again, that's just a snapshot of where our crime's been occurring. And then lastly, what I was going to address is just recover the incident that happened on January 7th, where an individual broke into the Public Works building there off of Commercial and 325th and stole the vac truck and crashed through the gate and committed a burglary there, and then crashed the car into the field, and then basically ran to a house off of Timrick and stole a vehicle and committed a burglary there before the deputies were able to catch him at his house. What I point out there is this happened after hours, and I got to give kudos to my fellow comrades there in Washington County that came out and not only found that guy and took all those reports for us, but they also located the guy at his house and arrested him that same night. So that was pretty awesome that all that was handled, and not awesome that the guy, did a bunch of damage and caused a bunch of destruction to us, but at least that we caught him, and he just went to grand jury on that. Not him, but we just did the grand jury today, and I don't have the verdict on whether they indicted him. My guess is he got indicted, but I know that happened today. So I'm open to any questions if you guys have any. I'm gonna see if I can't unshare my screen here.
Counselors, any questions for Chief Haxton? Counselor Sheldon.
Okay, so, and this is for a bigger discussion later, because we know we need to address public safety from the standpoint of some of our coverage. So I won't get into the weeds with that, but you know, I went back and extrapolated some of the numbers that I think you'd sent previously, and it looked to me like, from my quick calculations, that about 25% of activity is occurring in hours where we potentially don't have coverage. And I don't know if that sounds correct or not, but I'm assuming those are priority 1 and 2s, which are going into the 911 system. But they may be more than that. And I need to spend a little more time and look at that. And I do want to respond to your request to chat. And that's really not for right now, but it appears to me that that's a bit of a, you know, a trend, and 25% seems like a fair amount to me, but it may be that those activities aren't as a priority, as a high priority, but it's certainly something we need to look at from the overall scheme of, you know, our coverage time, and maybe how we reconfigure to cover more of those hours so that we have bodies here a better percentage of the time that might abate some of that stuff. That's the only real comment I have. I do appreciate the numbers. And that's pretty much all the comment I have, at least on this report. I do think, obviously, we all know we need to have a little bit bigger discussion about this. And I have my own feelings about how we should approach it, which are for another time as well.
Thank you for that feedback, Councillor Sheldon. Anyone else? Councillor Papin.
Thank you. Chief Haxton, I just wanted to say thank you. I know that during one of the previous council meetings, I had expressed some concern with some of the data trending down, and I definitely see a reflection after our conversation of reports and specifically self-initiated up in all areas. So just want to say your hard work doesn't go unnoticed, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Papin. I know that we had discussed doing a public safety, you know, with the community, you know, like a open forum, that sort of thing. And because we're not really sure yet if we're gonna, and I know that people want to do it in person, totally get that. If we're moving in a direction where we're not doing in person like month after month, can we still maybe put it on the radar to try to figure out a good plan for having an open dialogue, an open community meeting somehow, even if we have to do it virtually? And you don't have to, like, I don't have to have an answer now on that, but I just would like to at least see, you know, maybe we can just somehow formulate a plan to make that happen. If we have to be virtual, you know, at least it still gives us an opportunity to connect with the community. And I still think that's really important.
Yeah, well, first off, let me say something real quick to Councillor Papin. I really appreciate the nice feedback. But again, I got to give all the credit to Conway and Schutz. They do, they're really awesome, and they're very proactive, and I think they're really, they're great for the city, and boy, am I lucky to have them. So really, it's all them. Secondly, I think with what you're saying, I know you don't want an answer now, but yes, maybe without the details, but we can absolutely do online meetings. We did it before. I don't think it's a big pull or a big ask to have that happen. So again, the downside is boy, I so much like in person better, but it is what it is. And we get the people we get. People either show up or they won't. So absolutely that can happen. And I can work on getting that set up. And there was talk about potentially doing it. I've got reservations. I don't want to do it too often. So the question is about how often, and I'm thinking probably quarterly is probably about the right answer. I'm always up to feedback or whatever, but I don't want to do it too few, and I don't want to do it too much because it just kind of ends up being just basically a city meeting. But I at least quarterly, I think wouldn't be too bad, if not biannually. But I think quarterly sounds about right.
Good.
But yeah, that can happen.
Okay, thank you for that. I appreciate that. I trust you'll come up with a good solution to that. So thanks. All right. Anything else for Chief Haxton? All right. Moving on to Public Works. Hi, Blake.
Hello, my camera's acting up again, so you just get to hear my great radio voice here. I do have a face for radio. The new things that we have going on this week, Chief kind of took my thunder about my back truck getting stolen, so I won't be able to talk about that. But if you have any questions, I'll answer. We are tomorrow going online with our SCADA system. We're actually getting our training tomorrow on the SCADA system for the new reservoir and pump station. And we'll be doing training for about the next week, and it'll go full online on the 27th. And then there'll be like a 30-day warranty period. Warranties can be longer than that, but it's going to be the test period to make sure we're working out all the bugs. So that'll actually start on the 27th. We also have this week a bid opening for our Cottage Street water line and pavement project. That's using the small cities allotment funds for the pavement part of that. And the water will be our capital improvements budget. Like I said, other than that, everything's pretty much the same on my report. But if you have any questions about what happened at the pump station, I'm more than happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Page.
Was the keys in the truck?
The keys were in the pump station, locked.
Okay.
In the pump station. No, we don't leave the keys in the vehicle. The door of the pump station was breached. The individual was looking for whatever inside of the pump station. First thing I did was check all the valves and pumps to make sure that nothing was vandalized. Everything was good there. Basically, he was after one vehicle in particular, and that one vehicle actually, due to the fact that it always drained the battery, had a kill switch on it, and he couldn't figure that out, but then decided to go for a joyride in the back truck. And the back truck will be, it did do some damage to the back truck, did $48,000 for the damage to the back truck. It'll actually take 3 months to get some of the material, the parts fixed. There has to be fabrication of 2 new water tanks, but we're going to patch it together. The repair shop's going to patch it together so we can actually get it back within the next couple of weeks so we can use it while the fabrication of everything else is being done.
And I have one more other question that's unrelated to the back truck.
Yep.
Do we have any kind of regulation or anything about having leaves picked up from the front? I live on the Timerick, and last year the leaves fell, and I got tired of looking at it from across the street, and I went up dragging my stuff down there and the neighbors' cans and picking up some people's leaves, and hoping that they seen it and they would, get the gist, but they didn't. I was wondering, do we have any kind of enforcement drive around and say, hey, you have this big pile of leaves in the front of your house for 3 months. Can you pick it up or get a ticket? Do we have anything like that?
That's something you might want to ask the chief about. I mean, we don't, we give them a time frame that they'll, we'll pick them up. If they miss it, so be it, it's their fault, but they do also have a yard debris container that they can put their own stuff in.
And if they don't, is there any kind of teeth that we have for that?
I don't know of anything that we have to enforce something like that.
Okay.
It's always peer pressure from the neighbors, tell them to get.
Yeah, I tried that. I tried the I'll do it myself thing last year, and done that. Okay, thanks.
fell, or did they pile them up and then they sat there?
What happened?
Are those leaves that just fell off the tree, or leaves that they piled up and they just sat there and rotted?
Piled up, sitting there rotting.
They piled them up?
Somebody did.
I think I know which individual it is, and that it was after the fact that we were done, that it was done, so.
We'll chat tomorrow, Blake. I'm sure maybe clean water when they do
No.
go
No,
through.
it's
and
just a situation. It's one of these, if we do it for one, everybody and their brother's gonna do it too. So maybe we write him in a letter and tell him to get his act together and get the stuff off the street.
Yeah.
You know, there are
I'm
resources.
not recommending we something to
Counselor Kendall? You're muted.
Is that better?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Huh, I know. Gremlins, I guess. Like is the 2 million gallon tank, is that drawdown gonna be like the million gallon tank? Where you use it down and then you refill it back up? Or is it gonna be something different?
The 2 million gallon tank is designed, well, let me back up. The 1 million gallon tank, the original tank,
Right,
that actually works, is going to be working on the theory of like a timer. So
right,
we'll set it for, it pumps out for 8 hours on Wednesday, and then it fills for 8 hours on Thursday. So it's going to work on that scenario. The 2 million gallon tank is going to actually be tied in with the pressure reducer and flow meter that are at 314th. So we have a set limit that we're required by JWC not to exceed. That's close to 825 gallons a minute, but we're going to use 500 gallons a minute as a moderate, comfortable flow rate that JWC would appreciate if we stayed at that we are going to monitor the flow rate, and then if it starts to creep above the 500 GPMs, the pumps at the 2 million gallon reservoir will start pumping out of the tank to reduce the need within the town, which will also, reduce the flow coming in.
right,
And so it's going to be more of a smart tank compared to the other
right. So
tank.
there'll be no noticeable pressure difference. It just, it'll just work and things will be
Yeah, I
good.
mean, it'll also monitor pressures too. And
Mhm.
but yeah, it'll be once we get the SCADA training, invite any of you that want to come down and show you the insides and what I have in the office, which is actually the little monitor that I can
Right.
control everything from there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Oh, last question. There was no break-in at the top of the water tank, was there?
No,
No
nothing
indication.
to the tank itself. It was basically the front door was
Okay,
breached, and then he
Yep.
just went through the pump house.
okay, thank you.
One thing I also need to mention is our arsenic removal system. I did have a 90% set plan review last week. We're looking at my crew himself installing the unit. So saves on some costs. It's just some minor mechanical work that I think the guys can do. So we're gonna, do it in-house. The plans are almost 100%. We are looking at a sizing decrease. We got some information from Hillsborough Pump Service that the size of pump that we would require is only going to have a 4-inch discharge rather than a 6-inch, and the original design showed a 6-inch. So we're just trying to save cost, and actually the size will be reduced a lot too, so it'll help in the compact
Right.
pump station. And we don't have to worry about it ever having to increase because we're not going to pump over 200 gallons a minute out of it, because anything over 200 gallons a minute creates cavitation and drawdown problems. So we're going to try to design it and build it to its specification. So we could actually look at assembling that. We could possibly be assembling that within the next few months.
You all said, Councilor Kendall?
Yeah, all done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Two things. Blake, I had a question about the Bryn Hill North Avenue. Are they just going to have flaggers and have one lane open while they install the new storm line? Or are they closing the road for?
No, until they get the north section of the road completed, which goes all the way to the curb, they will have one lane until that happens. There's not enough room to keep two lanes of traffic going without closing one lane.
Okay. And then secondly, is it possible to talk to the county about the intersection at Gordon and North and maybe installing on the, as you're going north at the stop sign there, maybe a sign that says oncoming traffic doesn't have to stop? You know, I've seen a few near misses there, people just not knowing that the southbound traffic they don't have to stop.
I reached out to the county. It must have been just before. It was in the beginning of December, and they were going to put that on their list of intersections to review. So it's time for me to follow up with them and see what they came back with.
Yeah, I've actually had a couple of people that they don't live here and that they use that road to travel to, you know, Pumpkin Ridge or whatnot. And I've had a couple of people. I was attending a couple of functions in Forest Grove, and I had two separate people come up to me and ask me about that. And I thought, that's crazy. So anyhow.
Well, one thing I asked them to look at was it gets used enough now that it might just need to be a three-way stop.
That'll be fun. All right. Thank you, Blake. I appreciate that. Any other questions for Blake? Councilor Sheldon.
That's not really a question, it's a comment. I noticed on several occasions that the lighting over the murals on the ag buildings in the middle of town doesn't seem to be working. And so and I thought when I originally looked at it, it might have been close enough to dusk that perhaps if it was on a timer, they weren't on, but I checked a couple other occasions and I don't believe they're working at all. So I don't know if those.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you for the I mean, like I said, I'm not in town at night, so I don't, really know that. I usually have shuts, lets me know about lights out and things like that. But yeah, I'll definitely take a look at it. It is tied in to the electrical in the within the building itself. You know what I'm saying? And there has been a new tenant that moved in, so maybe something got switched off that we don't know about. So.
It's certainly possible that they're likely on the same circuit because none of them are lit. So.
Okay. Well, I'll take a look at that, and thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome.
All right. Last call. All right, Blake, thank you very much for the report.
Okay. Everyone have a good evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
And next up is our finance director, Bill.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Okay, you have the staff report, and hopefully you had a chance to look at some of it. But as far as the operating funds go, general fund, streets fund, and water fund, We're still basically tracking expenses for the fiscal year overall, kind of under where budget could or should be at this point for the year. You probably saw we're going through and changing, improving, or correcting certain ways we account for certain things, including where payroll costs should be going versus where they have been. And so we're kind of going through and changing all that. So there'll be some modifications, a few $1,000s here, a few thousand there, 1, 2, 3, nothing major. But the bottom line is the numbers that you see do have the caveat of some changes are coming to correct some errors, as well as to fill in some information that isn't in yet. So the caveat is the results that you see that expenses are tracking below or at budget for the most part, those numbers will change a little bit as we get things corrected. And in some cases, things will be corrected in a kind of positive way, as in we have a few things like in Streets Fund, for instance. We've had some projects that used to be in the Streets Fund, but now they're in the Transportation Bond Fund. But unfortunately, for whatever reason, some of the expenses for those projects were accounted in the the Streets Fund. They shouldn't have been done that way. And so corrections to that need to happen. So some of those big numbers of expenses versus budget to date in the Streets Fund, for instance, they look well over 100%. A lot of that is just, we had some incorrect attribution of a transportation bond fund or to Cottage Street specifically. Some of the spending for that in particular was misattributed. So we'll go through, we have it all accounted, it's just not been put in the right bucket, so that we'll go through and we're working on fixing that and some other things. Any other interesting things about operations funds? Not really. So water fund account status report. I'll go ahead and move to that. That's been of keen interest past few months. December was a good month in terms of overdue balances being paid down. 2 months in a row, we've had a good pay down on overdue balances in December. A little over $2,700 in overdue balances were paid down. And so by the end of the year, we were down to about $12,322 in total balance overdue. And compared to 2 years ago, right before COVID actually, at that time it was a little over $15,000 in total overdue balances. So we're actually better than 2 years ago prior to COVID by about $3,000. I mean, almost exactly actually. We had a net reduction in number of overdue balances of 10. So it was a good month for the water fund and customers paying down overdue balances. I did get a report today that we only, I believe, had 4 water shutoff notices this month. If I understand, Andy was kind of sharing some news, so that's a very positive development in terms of the number of shutoff notices that we have to give. So I would say things are definitely moving in the right direction and have for a couple of months now, for certain. And then it is end of the calendar year. So that's the end of the first 6 months of the fiscal year 2022. So I have a snapshot of all of the capital funds in the city. And the big kind of upshot really of all the information is there hasn't been a lot of activity in most of the funds except for the Transportation Bond Fund. We have a few different projects very actively going. And then the other really kind of noticeable thing is that the Streets SDC Fund, we're going to have to do a supplemental budget. Back in April, when we put the budget together to go to budget committee, we had just kicked off the SDC methodology update study. And when we budgeted for the new year, for July 1st moving forward, we thought at the time this SDC study should be done mostly by the end of June. So the only expense left, maybe $3,000 or $4,000 maybe, is what we expected to spend in July to wrap the study up. Well, the study had to be delayed to start because we were waiting on a number of different things, information about some project issues and some new population numbers. we ended up doing a lot more of the study since July 1. And so the total cost of the study hasn't changed. It's just that we didn't get a lot of it spent before June 30th. It's a lot of it's been spent after July 1. So we just have to do a supplemental to kind of shift how that study's been done. And that's basically what that is for the Streets SDC fund. Nothing probably standing out unusual for the other capital funds. I did mention that we have recorded revenue in the urban renewal agency. 551,000 is what had officially come in by the time I ran this report. More has come in since. The county has reported property tax for us for the general fund as well as for urban renewal. It has been for a few weeks. And we're right about at forecast for both, very close. We'll get more numbers at the end of January, but right now we're kind of, honestly, the general fund right now sits at within $1,000 of what we forecast for the year. So that's not bad accuracy, but I think January we'll see a little bit more flow in. For whatever reason, November and December property tax revenue for the city and the urban renewal agency kind of had unusually slower months. So I think it looks like January will probably see a little bit of a kind of a last minute rush of some payments, and our revenue for the year for both will come in a little bit higher than forecast. So it's looking pretty good, I would say, for both. But the numbers in the urban renewal agency revenue, property tax revenue are far from final. I just want to point that out. Let's see, anything else capital fund wise? I wouldn't say, certainly stand for questions about any of this, of course, but I'm just trying to think of highlights. And then we have a new accounting clerk too, Bailey Gaunt, started on January 6th, and she'll be doing water billing, cash receipts. Will be the first person, first smiling face of city employees when anybody comes in to ask questions or want to pay a water bill. So she'll be the first that they see. And she's been doing really well. She's from Tualatin Valley Water District before this, so she comes with a lot of skills and a lot of abilities to really kind of get to work quickly on things. Those are really kind of the highlights, I would say. So if anybody has any questions or anything, I'd be happy to talk with them about it.
Counselors,
Make a comment?
go right ahead.
Yeah, Bill, when you look at our little 3-cent gas tax and what that station pulls in a year, when you look at the state just implemented that 35-cent gas tax, can you imagine the billions of dollars that that's going to create for the state? You know, it's unbelievable. In one chunk. Did you have any idea that was coming? Did we know it, the city?
Councilor Kendall, not very specifically, no. I mean,
Yeah.
the nice thing about it really is that, and this kind of gets back at I think we talked a little bit about how North Plains grew so quickly, but the Census
Yep.
Bureau didn't know how much population we had,
Right?
how much we added. But the state and the Census Bureau are now on the same page about what our population is and what it has been. And so we should see better, more accurate for our population revenue sharing from that,
Oh,
as well as other things. So
right.
yeah, that's a nice development with everybody on the same page about what our population is.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anyone else for Bill? All right. Thank you, Bill. Appreciate the report.
Thank you.
Land use application. Looks like Lennar is doing what Lennar is supposed to be doing. Busy. Any questions there? Okay. Moving on then to the public hearing and ordinance. We have ordinance number 476 is the Planning Commission membership requirements. code change. And so this this is an emergency adoption tonight. If that's the way we go, we'll have to do a first reading, second reading, and then an adoption. So there's, hopefully you have your packets, and sample motions are attached, and I'll let Andy jump in here and with an explanation of that.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. We're 46 minutes into the meeting and I haven't spoken yet, so this is good. Save my voice. Yes, thank you very much. This is an issue that I know a few city councilors have brought up, at least over the past year, and the same goes with some planning commissioners too. And that is sort of rectifying, I guess, probably characterized as a bit of a loophole in the membership makeup within the code for the planning commission. And as you see in the little staff report I put together, basically there's one key sentence that says all members of the planning commission shall be residents of, owners of property in, or business owners in the city, with no sort of numerical, I guess, examples given to, you know, who could make up what. So in theory, every member of that planning commission who sets, you know, who makes, you know, important decisions and quasi judicial decisions for the city, every member could be outside of North Plains, meaning a non-resident. So what the planning commission had suggested, and I worked with the city attorney on this, was basically reverting the code back to, I think, what it used to be, maybe a decade ago or so. And as you see there, it's making 5 of the 7 positions being reserved for city residents. And then the 2 remaining positions to be filled with those that live outside the city but still meet that non-resident criteria, owning property or owning a business located within the city. The reason this is considered an emergency is we have some folks that have submitted applications to be on the planning commission, and this would be something they're due, the planning commission themselves were due to look at those applications at their next meeting in February. So by passing this tonight, this sort of helps the code change would go into effect before that planning commission meeting, before they'd be making some sort of appointment, before that appointment would come to the city council. So, I mean, this is a very, it's a, not a, I guess, super, let me put it this way, you and the planning commission have taken up more controversial issues than just sort of fixing the membership portion of the code. So we had thought that to sort of expedite this, it could be done by emergency adoption. One thing I will note that in the resolution, the code section that is shown that would replace what currently exists, you know, I was talking to the city attorney and talking to Chair King of the Planning Commission about, does this really, what would this do to current members of the Planning Commission? Because it doesn't really, I guess, protect them or let them keep their seat. So Spencer did draft something again that would basically give current members on the Planning Commission, if we have 3 of them that currently live outside of the city, they would be able to retain their seats until a vacancy comes up, or until one of those 3 does not own a business, does not own a piece of property in the city. Basically, as long as they're a member in good standing, the status quo could remain with the current commissioners that are on the body, but for the future vacancies, that's when this code actually would take effect. Does that make sense?
So they could extend their other terms and it'd be fine, since they're already seated.
Here's what that, well, they would not be allowed to extend their term. I guess probably what would happen is the first of the 3 members that live outside of the city, the first one who comes up for a vacancy, they're, you know, they would be off. They're the first to kind of hit the chopping block. So this is the this is the addition that Spencer made. Currently, sitting members of the planning commission shall be able to continue to serve at the pleasure of the city council, but future vacancies, that's when the new language comes into effect.
Is that clear if they're being reappointed? If they're already sitting and the term is over and they want to be reseated, does that reset that, or is that because they are current members?
Right, no, this,
It says nothing about terms, it says members.
yeah. Currently sitting members, I think you consider it, they're an incumbent that term has ended. So the way I interpret this, and I can get this, I guess I can get that clarity, is when a term ends, that is turning over that position.
Does that show that, or is that
Well, it does not, because it's never a given that someone is just automatically given their seat. I mean, they still have to file for reappointment. Planning commission recommends that, and then the city council ultimately has to approve that.
so if they decide to try it, if it say that all three of them want to remain on and they apply to be resituated, do we have to say, sorry, according to the way we think of this, the term is expired, so your seat is done? Is that how it's gonna be applied, or? Because there's
Well,
nothing about the completion of term is not in there at all. Just the people that are already seated get to continue running. It's not very clear as far as, something that an attorney would probably write.
If their term is up, then this section of the code would apply.
Is that
I mean, that's
is
how
what I
I'm
read?
interpreting it.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, a term is a term. It's there for a reason. You have
Okay.
to file again. You have to make your, I mean, typically it turns into a bit of a rote exercise if someone is an incumbent, but they still have to file. This new language that I just showed, you wouldn't even have to technically adopt that. You could just go with the 5 of the 7 positions, and it's ultimately up to the city council to say, you know what, we want to have at least 5 members, 5 residents of the community on here, so we're not going to accept this anyway. But this is just sort of a protection for those that are currently on the city council, could remain on there, but when the term is up, they kind of, I guess they get the short end of the stick, really, if that's what the pleasure of the council is.
Councillor Sheldon.
The only question I have is the ordinance before us is not written in the same respect of what we saw that was shared on the screen. So what if we, move the title, and are we going to have to amend that?
Yeah, okay, do you want me to show the 2 different versions on the screen?
Well, I think if we're going to have a motion to read it by title only, it should be the version that we have a consensus on that we want to have go forward.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Lori has that prepared, either version. So let me pull up what was in the packet, and then one's going to be a PDF and one's going to be a Word version. So here is the PDF. So the commission members shall receive 5 of the 7 positions shall be reserved for city residents. So this would be the new language. This is the new language. Now that's what's in the packet. That's what's in the staff report. Now, to sort of clarify the issue at hand of what about the sitting members on the planning commission? This is that language. You'll see the 5 of the 7 positions shall be reserved for city. That remains. There's just sort of a preamble. Currently sitting members of the planning commission shall be able to continue to serve at the pleasure of the city council, but for future vacancies, 5 to 7 positions, so on and so forth. So does that make sense what that sort of preamble does there?
It does. I would have written it differently, and that being probably alluding to what James is referring to. I think it should be that they'll continue to serve until the expiration of their term, and into that, and then just going forward, that the next sentence is going to supersede that.
Does that convey, that addition right there, Councillor Sheldon, convey? That's
Yes,
all
I think.
Okay.
I think it conveys what we should be approving going forward, assuming we have a consensus amongst us. That's what I feel about it. I think
And that makes it far more clear to people that may question it.
No, that makes sense. Yeah, it does.
You can moonlight as an attorney, Councillor Page. I think that's a good addition.
I went to law school.
You went to law school.
Come on,
Well, you have an
I wanna
MBA
make sure
too,
that-
so I can't keep up. So
come on.
So Councillor Kindle, Councillor Papin, Councillor Smith. Any comment about the addition to this this ordinance?
One comment, if I may.
Go right ahead.
Okay, so it gets filled to 7 positions and 2 of them are out of city seats. They're filled. So when the vacancies come up on people that are now residents in the city, no more out of city residents can apply for those open positions, as long as 2 of them are within the city or being fulfilled, but the 2 seats are being filled by people outside the city.
Yeah, so like
So it's- yeah.
five city residents and 2 basically at large.
Right, so, okay,
Well, I'll add that the language gives the discretion to the council because it's
Oh.
will. So that's entirely at the discretion of the council to make the appointment as they see fit.
oh, okay, so it can be more than 2 then, could be.
Well, no, it can't be
No.
more. But
Okay.
but they don't have to necessarily be people that don't reside here. They have to follow the 2 other conditions, which is
Right.
own business, their own property in the city.
Right, okay.
Councillor Smith, your hand is raised.
Yes, it is. My question, it says, if you have property in the city. Now, if you live outside the city and not have property in the city, does that qualify you? Is what I'm asking.
the other
Yes.
condition,
You you don't live in the city, but you have property in the city. Yes,
But if you don't have property in the city, does that qualify you?
you have to, that's one of the qualifications. You
Or
have to
business.
be- or business or a property owner, real property or a business owner.
Reason I'm asking, because is that, that's for all boards, correct? I mean, for the parks or library.
This only
economic-
applies to the planning commission.
So,
It can be changed for other boards.
okay, because I know some other boards, I think there are some cases where they live outside the city, Hillsborough, whatever, but don't have property in the city.
I think we can have Andy double check that for us, but I think, for example, I think the Parks Board has a similar qualification for board members. But we can have Andy double check that for us.
Yeah, because my concern is they sat on a library board a couple of months ago, and somebody that lived in the city was moving to Hillsborough. And their understanding was that they could still be on the library board.
and they had no further connection.
Correct.
Business.
So I just
no-
want to make sure that we're legal on all this.
Well, and consistent, I think,
Yes.
is really the key. We need to be consistent with our boards.
Have we
So,
ever audited our boards?
Like, do we know
Yeah.
where people live or what? Oh, yeah. I mean, Lori does this quite frequently because we have members that are either applying new or reapplying. Yeah, so part of the process is, where's your address? Do you own property? Do you have a business in town? She knows the composition of these boards and commissions far better than I do because she has to handle all of the paperwork for people that are applying. But I don't know the library board exactly. That's the one I'm probably least familiar with.
I'm
Lori-
actually looking it up in the code, right? Trying to find it in the code. I know the Economic Development Committee does not have the same requirements that the Planning Commission and the parks do. Economic Development Committee is a little different. They can live outside of the city limits, but be business oriented, I guess. Whereas parks, they have to own, planning, they have to own a business or own property within the city limits. That is not the requirement for economic development. I'm trying to look up the library at the same time as I'm doing this, and that's.
So I'm looking at least 3 members of the library board shall be residents of the city. No more than 2 voting members shall be engaged in the same kind of business or trade. But Lori, I don't know if this is the latest, because there was an ordinance passed to increase that to 5 voting members.
There was, yes, and that was just back in October, I think.
Yeah, ALP is very slow to update the code sometimes, though.
That's true. We only send things to them twice a year because if we send it every time, it costs us a ton more money.
Yeah.
But I'm looking up the library ordinance that we just did. And that is 474. At least 4 voting members of the library board shall be residents of the city. No more than 2 voting shall be engaged in the same kind of business. So it basically says what Andy read, I believe. And so they can live outside of the city limits up to 3.
And I think I know the reason for that too, is because the library is really the one department that we have that serves a lot of residents that live outside of the city. So I can sort of understand it. I mean, part of our funding allocation from WCCLS is because of that service area. So that's one where I could understand that. So you'd still have a majority, 4 out of 7 need to be residents of the city. So if there's any sort of justification for the non-resident component, that may be it for that board.
So if we go back to the Planning Commission, and we can certainly have Andy and Lori look at the other, and if, you can certainly respond to us maybe in an email just to, give us a snapshot of that, Lori, in an email for the other boards and commissions, just for our own knowledge. And also just to make sure that we are being consistent with membership, that would be great. But as far as the Planning Commission is concerned, and what we're looking at tonight is adding that additional language. 5 members are in city residents, 2 members are basically at large. You either own property or you have a business. And I think cleaning this up was a smart catch for the Planning Commission. So I'd like to move forward and just to kind of, make sure that we have everyone's feeling okay with the language. Councilor Papin, did you have any input or thumbs up?
I know that we have discussed this in the past, and I agree that it is helpful to be aligned with the same expectations across the board, and appreciate someone bringing it forward to the agenda tonight. So I'm in favor.
Okay.
And this was brought up at the city council meeting last week as well, and not city council meeting, the planning commission meeting as well, and they were on board with it. So we all agree with it, that this is should have been done. With that being said, are you ready for a motion?
We have 3 in our packet.
If you want me to put anything on the screen, just let me know.
Okay,
I move to conduct the first reading of ordinance 476 by title only.
with,
The amendments were put in there. Sorry, I have COVID and haven't been sleeping, so.
The motion, I don't think you need to withdraw the motion, but you need to be more specific because section 31.41A1 needs to be amended.
I move to conduct the first reading of ordinance 476 with the amendment that the current planning commissioners can serve until that are outside of the, my gosh, let me write this down.
can you put it up on the screen, Andy? That'll be easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just changing section 1 of the resolution.
I move to conduct the first reading of ordinance 476 with the amendment of section 31.41A1 by title only. Is that correct?
Yes,
That works.
yes.
Do we have a second?
Second,
We have a first by Counselor Phage, seconded by Counselor Kindle. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed?
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. So ordinance number 476, and ordinance amending chapter 31.41, section A, section 1 of the North Plains Municipal Code regarding planning commission membership and terms and declaring an emergency. So the next motion will be to conduct a second reading. Any takers?
I'll move to conduct second reading of ordinance 476 as it's amended.
I'll second.
Right, we have a first by Counselor Sheldon, seconded by Counselor Phage. Any discussion? Hearing none, motion, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carries. Ordinance number 476 is an ordinance amending chapter 31.41, section A1 of the North Plains Municipal Code regarding planning commission membership and terms and declaring an emergency. And last but not least, we need a motion to adopt ordinance 476.
I'll move to adopt ordinance 476 as it's amended.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion on the table by Counselor Sheldon, seconded by Counselor Smith. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. All right. All right, next is item number 8A, which is resolution 2171, adopting the criteria for city manager evaluation. So I want to say it was May 2019. Andy or Lori, correct me if I'm wrong. We adopted resolution number, I think it was 2040. And the set of criteria that we needed to use for the city manager evaluation so the process to do this is Andy needs an evaluation, and we're the body that gives him that evaluation. And per the city attorney, we actually have to review the criteria and in public, and then we have to adopt it through resolution. We have to adopt the metrics for that. So what you have in your packet, the first group is the city manager evaluations, is what we had adopted. And there's a second city manager performance evaluation that the city attorney Heather Martin sent to me, that I sent out to all of you also in this packet, that I wanted you to look at and get some feedback on. And it goes into, it's a little bit more up to date, and it actually talks a little bit more about the process, and also identifies some more detail regarding community and details about each one of the categories. And so I wanted us to take a look at both and have a conversation about what we need to use in order to give Andy his evaluation, because he's actually due this year for a formal evaluation. So I'd like to just kind of open it up for discussion to get some additional feedback from everybody, and see what you think. Did you all have a chance to review the first city manager evaluation? Okay, so that had about 16 criteria on it. It had a rating sheet on it, and what we had done is basically each city councilor filled that out, and then the data was compiled by the city attorney with feedback. Again, I don't think it really really did a deeper dive in, it fit the need, in my opinion, at the moment. The second evaluation is the city manager evaluation. It's Exhibit B in your packet. And I know that I talked to Councilor Sheldon about it, and he offered up some feedback. And I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind taking a minute and sharing some of your feedback on that with the council. Councilor Sheldon.
Yeah, I gotta see if I can find it. I know I sent it to you. Well, principally, and I'm gonna wing it because I don't have a copy in front of me. I should have printed that off. My preference is a more rounded evaluation, not just from the standpoint of the council, but also the city staff that works under the city manager, because I think that's how we need to look at, the entire realm of performance. And that to me favors Exhibit B. And so my comments on Exhibit B were specific in some regards as to each section. Some of those points in the sections that are given may or may not apply to the relationship between the council and the city manager. And we would have to go through each one of these points and decide if we feel, I guess, they apply to our relationship, where I think these certainly could be used by the mayor. And I think the mayor, and I mentioned this to the mayor, she should have her own performance evaluation. While we can adopt that as well, it could be Exhibit B in its entirety. It's because the intimacy between the mayor and the CEO is different than the councilors and the city manager, and certainly the staff and the city manager. And it could be used by staff with the addition of what's at the end of it. And I don't want to go into too much, but each one of those points may or may not apply to our relationship with the city manager as a counselor. And that's where my feedback is. We almost would have to decide in each one of these, which of these points really apply to us as a council in our relationship with the city manager versus either the mayor or a staff person.
So do you think that we should go through each one of these sections and just either strike it or just say this does not apply when you are going through the evaluation?
Right. Well, I think we could do a couple things. One, yeah, and it doesn't have to be laborious. We don't want to take all night doing it. Just, which one of these, have them read each section. I think the city counselor's position, yeah, we share what we think applies in that section and keep what doesn't, strike out what's not. I think most of those things probably apply to the mayor in that relationship. Now, maybe maybe there's others who have a difference, but at least from my aspect, I think some of those things probably apply to me as a counselor, but also may not apply. And I'm just thinking, yeah, let's unless somebody else has a different idea. I don't think A is adequate, honestly. That's my feeling.
I don't think it is either. And Andy's been at the helm now several years, and this Exhibit B has a lot more depth and detail to it that I think would we would be able to go through that and probably score it a lot more effectively. So, Andy, would you mind putting the Exhibit B on the screen for all of us to see? So the first page just talks about the process and then the rating definitions. But I think number 1, community public relations, I think that would be page 2. Russ, I printed off what you sent to me. Do you want me to just?
Sure. Yes.
This is for us to use. So that first, number 1, bullets number 2, 3, and 4. So Russ's input on that basically says, I'm not convinced the council would know enough about the highlighted points, bullet 2, 3, and 4 to effectively answer, but the mayor might, since there is more direct contact at that level. This may work well for the mayor separately, and I think a separate survey is warranted in the case of the mayor, but the city council should have these excluded, rephrased, or rewritten. And so those 2, 3, and 4 bullets, if you look at those, any of you have a comment on Russ's comments?
So number 2 is seeks to use criticism of self or city in positive ways. 3, so let me go 3. Maintains effective relations with media representations and open to suggestions from public concerning improvements in service. I think we have enough on city council to actually make a decision on that. If somebody were to complain about the city in such a way, or anything, do we have enough? Do we get any kind of feedback from Andy? So that's kind of what I see. I don't know what would be kind of fuzzy about that. I think we have enough to know if he's open to suggestions from public concerning improvements in service. If we were to be aware of the public having concerns, maintains effective relations with media represent. Is he in the media? Do we not? Is Andy not there, or does he say something in inappropriate.
Mhm.
Seeks to use criticism of self or city in positive ways. I think we can make that call.
So how do you think about this? If when you're scoring that, and maybe there might be 2 or 3 that you feel like don't apply, would you be able to successfully comment in the supporting area saying, I don't think 2 and 3 apply. I have no comment on 2 and 3, but overall, he meets or exceeds.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds doable. My main thing is I like to see is we just discussed a few minutes ago, some staffing issues. And I would like to see some bottom up reports and how the employees would grade the manager as well. I like to see some of that feedback because I don't have access to that. And I would like to see some of that. I'm a manager and I get graded by my employees, and I get to see not, it's anonymous, but I still get to see what people write. So I could, fix that or address it.
The question 10 on Exhibit B actually is for staff assessment only,
Right. I seen that part and I like that.
right there. And then there's a section there where, we would strongly encourage them to give any kind of comments.
But do we get to see that before we do ours? Or do we have access to that? Because I remember last year when I filled out, or not last year, I think it was last year, I filled out the evaluation. I didn't get to see the actual overall feedback from it. I just filled out mine and sent it down into the wind.
We did have, it was 19 and all the comments were compiled. And when we met in person, each person got a packet to look at that. We discussed it. And then that packet then was returned back to me and given back to Heather Martin, actually. And then she destroyed, she filed what she needed to file and shredded the remaining. But
I didn't see everybody else's though.
We didn't do a 360 approach. Like we did not get employee feedback that first year.
Right. So I think the number 2 one or B is better because it has that in there. Plus, I'd also like to have a compiling of what everybody else has for ratings and be able to review that as well afterwards.
Okay. Number 2, the leadership section. Anyone else have any more comments about number 1? And well, basically, if we look through each one of these, 1 through 9, I mean, the information is really going to be the same as far as, there are certain things in here that if they don't apply, you can state that outright.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. It's just some of these I just don't think are that fitting for the relationship. Sure, you can make a comment about anything, but it's just a general comment. Some of these things I don't know. I don't work with Andy. I know things about him, and I'm not being derogatory in any way, and I'm not intending to. I'm just saying, do these things really apply from an evaluation standpoint? Maybe they do, and maybe they don't.
I will say for number 1, I could see why Councillor Sheldon would have some reservations over certain bullet points. Because looking at it, I'm looking at some of these and I can only think of 1 or 2 examples for some of the bullet points. And then trying to think under the lens of, is that a fair way to, evaluate someone if you only have 1 or 2 examples? So I definitely hear that feedback, but also knowing that I do have those 1 or 2 examples that I could base that off of is enough for me to say number 1 would be fine as is. I think number 2, personally, from a counselor perspective, it's hard to know, does someone seek to develop knowledge, skills, and abilities of employees? Obviously, I know we've discussed in the past that there's a little bit of a disconnect, right, between council and you know, a accounting clerk that you might see with city staff. So I don't know if number 2, I would say aligns with something I would feel comfortable evaluating someone with, just because I haven't had to encounter most of these bullet points.
Well, that's why we have to get the 360 evaluations back first, right? That was my thought. Having the employee up feedback.
Right, but their feedback's not going to change my evaluation, right? So I don't need to know what the employees are saying, because that's going to be weighted differently than something else. But that's just my opinion.
Any other thoughts on 2? All right, 3. So Councillor Sheldon highlighted bullet 3 and bullet 7. Are there other ones in here that you can either pass on, or do you have a sense of can you use that number 3 effectively in this situation?
Three looks good.
I feel comfortable with all bullet points of 3.
Any other input? Item number 4.
I feel comfortable with 4 as written.
So do I.
And Ricky, Councillor Smith, if you need to chime in, feel free.
So far, I'm agreeing with what everybody's saying. I haven't seen anything I disagreed with.
Okay. 5. So Councillor Sheldon had about 5 of the bullets. The first 5 bullets were highlighted.
Yeah, and the reason why I highlighted them is that would have to be directly involved in interactions between us, but that's a small view of a behavioral competency in terms of the overall job. To me, it's just one lens.
Any other feedback or thoughts on that?
I think the 360 bottom up review that I mentioned 4 times already would be appropriate to help get a guide for things that we are kind of blind to, but I'm fine with these ones as far as what I can see.
I think there are a few bullet points in here that are hard to gauge as a counselor, such as the bullet point third from the bottom that says completes work in acceptable time periods, as well as performs work accurately. It's hard for me to think of concrete examples enough to feel comfortable to evaluate someone on this. And I have one other side question as well that I'd like to ask, and we can save till the end as well, if that's okay.
Mhm.
But I think the other part I am curious by, this is my first time, sitting through an evaluation on council. And my question is, are all of these priorities clearly defined and laid out to someone? I'm thinking about my work and thinking about, I know what the expectation is, and I know the things that I will be reviewed on, and it's pretty transparent. And so I just want to make sure that we're being sensitive, that this isn't going to blindside someone, that they didn't know that they were being evaluated on this. And this wasn't really within their approach.
That's a great point, Trista.
So I just want to make sure we're being fair in that sense. And again, we can talk about this at the end, but I just wanted to be mindful to make sure that is that we're being fair about it as well. I don't want to blindside anyone.
That's a very good point, Trista. Last time we graded Andrew used a different criteria. Maybe we should use the same one. Maybe because that's the way he was thinking he's gonna be graded this time around.
Mhm.
And before we start it, the year before, we'll pull this out before we do this. So he has a whole year to perform according to these.
And I will also make sure that each one of you has his feedback. So the first go around, he did fill out the city manager input form and answered each one of those questions that are on from Exhibit A, and was able to provide feedback. So you will also get a copy of his first evaluation and then his feedback, so that you have a baseline, if you will. So, I mean, maybe, and Councilor Fage, that might be a good point, as far as if we used, Exhibit A on him first, we should use Exhibit A on him this time. I mean, that's a good point as well. Any other thoughts on that? You want to discuss that at the end?
I do, and I thank Trista for bringing it up, because I would have totally got lost in the weeds without first thinking about this. I'm like, oh yeah, that's great. We should. Right now we have what's called a moving target,
Yeah.
and that's never a good thing for managers to do.
So do you want to, let's just finish looking at this and then we'll go back to that. Item 6. Any in there that kind of stand out, saying you could use or not use, or Councilor Sheldon, you had 3 and 6 highlighted.
Yeah, I don't really have any additional comment on it, other than I'm not certain they apply to our relationship.
Okay.
I could see how let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I could see how bullet point 6 might be a little bit of a stretch. I can think of a specific example where there was an opportunity that a project was combined with something else, and it was a fiscally responsible move that I wouldn't have thought about, right? It was definitely an outside the box example. So I can think of one example there, but I would say that, is one example enough to grade someone? I don't know. Like I want to be really fair and mindful.
Seven. Councilor Sheldon, you had 2 and 4 highlighted.
Yes, just because I have no idea how he performs in those areas. If I had direct feedback, I could better answer that question, but I'm not sure it's a really relevant
Okay.
criterion.
Any other feedback? Okay. Counselor Sheldon, you had 1, 2, and 5 highlighted.
Yeah, I think this has a lot more to do with the relationship that doesn't sit with the council necessarily. I think it's more subordinates, and he's a decision maker, and he certainly makes decisions without a doubt. I'm not saying that doesn't apply. I'm just not certain that I could effectively say that I know how he does those things. He or she, for that matter. I mean, whoever it would be.
Number 9. And then number 10 is staff only.
And I presume they're answering all the previous 9, but includes 10.
Yes, I would conclude with that. So that is Exhibit B. And Andy, can you pull up Exhibit A? And Exhibit A is what we used with Andy in 2019. And so the city manager was able to each counselor use this criteria, use the performance of standard rating that was on the front. Those scores were compiled, and then everyone had an opportunity to make comments in the additional comments section. And then those comments were compiled, and that is what we shared with him for his first evaluation. Now, it's up to us to decide if we want to, use the same criteria, or if we want to use Exhibit B, or scratch them both and try to find another criteria. Any thoughts on this tool that we're looking at right now?
I'll just circle back around to Trista's original comment, is what criteria was Andy performing to for the last 2 years? And to use that one. Moving the goalposts is not a very
I don't
good
think
way
it's
to
move the
manage.
goalpost. I totally disagree. We're at the discretion to throw anything at him or her that we want. We're the board, we're in control. We ask the questions, we get the answers, and we decide. I don't think this, I'm not a kumbaya guy when it comes to that. I just totally disagree. I think it should be more well-rounded, should come from staff. We should see a good, well-rounded performance review of our executive.
And so are you thinking, when you say staff, are you leaning more towards just department heads or all the employees?
No, all of them, every single one. We don't have a big staff. Come on. I mean, we're
Right.
small potatoes.
Great.
I see both sides to this. I see Counselor Sheldon and having high expectations and wanting and expecting excellence. I also feel that it's not fair to have a priority and work towards that, knowing those are your boundaries and that's your goal and that's what you've been rated on in previous years, and then at the last minute throw something else in and then leave that employee thinking, oh gosh, did I fulfill all these new duties that are expected of me that I didn't even know I was going to be graded on. So if I were to propose something, I would prefer to keep Exhibit A. However, move the goalpost towards Exhibit B for future performance reviews. And that way it is clearly communicated and all employees going forward know what will be expected of them.
I totally agree. Even though we demand excellence, we should have our excellence communicated of what we expect to be excellent. I would go with what we graded on last time because that's what he's expecting this time. And were we to go forward, I would move our new ideals to be put up in front and clearly communicated.
I will also add that Exhibit B is not perfect the way it is. So I would agree with Counselor Sheldon that we do need to make some amendments to Exhibit B because there are certain scenarios in that Exhibit B that will not apply to future council to be able to effectively grade an employee. So I would propose also Exhibit B at a later date with amendments.
Do you see Exhibit B as defining more of what a city manager does or should be doing versus Exhibit A?
I don't know if I need to answer, but I'm going to. Yes, the time is to take the step now. We don't need to go backwards. We need to go forwards.
And if we moved forward with Exhibit B, how comfortable would you all feel, like I said in the beginning, to just make comments like, I've not experienced this with him, or I don't have any experience with, bullet B or bullet C, that sort of thing. And then I have another question for you. Should we ask Andy, like, his preference on Exhibit A or Exhibit B? Or is that an appropriate question to ask? Councilor Sheldon.
Yes, I think it is. I mean, this is not secret. Yes, a personnel matter is normally not disclosed to the public in the evaluation form.
Right.
But we are the evaluators and he is the evaluee and he should have some input into that. And I'm not suggesting that, whatever format we use, that he doesn't have some input into what we finally adopt.
Andy, would you like to comment on my question?
Sure. Yeah, I would have to. I would not consider whatever choice you make. If you go with B, I think it's more comprehensive. I'm just reading through that compared to what Exhibit A is. So what I did, so my only evaluation was 2.5 years, almost 3 years ago this spring. That's a whole global pandemic ago. So I'm reading some of this and thinking, man, I'm probably going to fail on some of these things just because, I don't know about fail, but some of the work situations changed. Some people in the community maybe haven't seen me as much because we haven't had events. They haven't seen me out there as much. Some of these things are a bit different. I went through B, and to me, I read it as more comprehensive in what I would want to see in a manager and in a city manager. And I totally get some of the comments that you wouldn't be able to answer every single one of those. And I've rarely ever seen an evaluation form that is perfect, that gives you a chance to just really 100% evaluate some person's skill set or how they act in situations. I know some of you, like Councilor Phage, you're in a very large organization with a very large human resources apparatus that is global and probably has really, really fine-tuned the metrics in the performance evaluation. So that could be completely different, but there's a lot of subjectivity too in some of these too. So I wouldn't worry too much about if there's some parts you maybe don't know enough, even if you can't answer. Just that could be just in A, or not enough information, and I'm totally fine with that. And again, I wouldn't consider this moving the goalposts just because the last 2 years I haven't gone back and revisited this through the pandemic to see how I've acted in that time, because it's just kind of thrown things out of whack. Doing something completely new, and frankly, me getting to hear your how you're approaching some of this criteria, if it is a new form, is just as valuable to me, because I'm kind of hearing what you're thinking, and I would know kind of what I would be, quote unquote, graded on, and I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. An evaluation is there's always going to be some discomfort, even if there's a good relationship with people, and I think that's completely fine. But I think B is more comprehensive and more fitting of the position when I went back and looked at sort of the criteria from the 2019 evaluation. So those are just my 2 cents.
Councillor Kendall or Councillor Smith, any feedback?
Yes, I concur with Russ that we don't need to go backwards. We need to go forward and work with this sheet, or work with B. And it'll be a learning process with B anyway. And if there's something we don't think we need to answer on and don't have enough knowledge on, we just bypass it. And after we get everybody's back in, we'll have a better idea of the majority of what they think on certain areas of it and what people don't answer on. And then the next time we could bypass those questions.
Councillor Kendall?
Yeah, you're looking at all this, a lot to absorb, but when I look at B versus A, I like the B. I think there's enough in B that would overlap into A. I mean, there's a lot of stuff here that, I'm going to have trouble answering or won't be able to answer. And my last question is, in B, like just say number 5, behavioral. So every one of those bullets gets a rating from 1 to 5. Is that, or just, is that how that works? Is that how that's going to work? I'm just curious.
I would think it's just that section as you evaluate.
Okay, overall, okay, that's good. I was glad to hear that. Thank you. That's I was looking at that and I said, oh man, this is gonna be a nightmare. I'm gonna lose sleep over this. So Andy's gonna be pretty easy to evaluate in my experience with him. So anyway, I would like to go ahead with B. I think it looks good. You look at the 9 bullets, boom, you look at that, you overrate them, think about them, and give it your best shot. I really do. I don't have to answer I don't want to answer 100 questions about Andy, for me, spend 5 nights doing this. I just like to read these and think about it and my interaction with what he's done at the council or in person and be done with it. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I actually prefer B because it is much more comprehensive, but it also, and then to Councillor Sheldon's point, as a mayor, I'm able to see some of these and I might be able to, grade them a little differently than you all, but that's okay too, right? And that's okay too.
Exactly.
And it's just based on the experience that I've had with him. And I think the first one is is really vague. And when I went back and reread this again, over the weekend, I felt like I had to think about this one more. I feel like I had to like really think about that first one more. Like, okay, well, what does that mean? And what is this trying to say? And I got a little exhausted by that experience. So, so I actually would prefer Exhibit B. And that's where I'm going to lean. So I'm hearing we've got 4 Exhibit Bs.
Well, having a chance to have Andy voice in on the goal setting that we had for him from last time, from what it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, that you were not really performing to these goals. These are just something that you want to be rated by. And if that is correct, then that wasn't your tasks. And this is going to be just a rating using these criteria, and you were not performing to the old one. I'm much better with B because it's more concise, right? It's broader. It has it's a better review system than A. So if you're fine with that and you haven't been performing towards A and you feel that you're being slighted, and if that's not the case, then that's great. I'm willing to go with B. I think B's a better evaluation system anyway.
Councilor Papin?
I would all.
Oh.
Go ahead. I would also echo the same sentiment. I at first was a little hesitant to hear Andy's response because I didn't want to have any bias in this, but it is reassuring to hear that these weren't even really clear parameters that he was basing his performance off of in general. And I don't mean that in a negative way, but I just mean he wasn't living, breathing, dying by this criteria. So that being said, I am perfectly fine going ahead with Exhibit B. And Councilor Sheldon, I just want to say thank you for pushing forward with that. I think I was letting my own bias of wanting to be fair kind of cloud my original opinion. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome. And I kind of look at things holistically and sometimes maybe too much so. And I'm just thinking, I don't think there's anything in here that Andy would object to. And hearing from him now, which I had no idea, but I felt like we should hear from him, is that, if he's comfortable with this, I think it's a much better tool. I mean, like he said, it's not perfect, but it's going to move us forward, I think.
So
I
this will
did
be
spend the last 3 years wondering how I could engender more truck, but I know I didn't get a passing.
for the record, that's supposed to be trust.
Well,
and also, so this particular evaluation tool is something that we would be able to use. And then I also want to bring it to all of our attention too, and I think page 44 is the start of it, Andy, is the city manager input form. And so this is where Andy can actually give us, he can answer these questions for himself and give us input, because I think that's going to be really valuable for us to be able to hear and to read what he has to say with each one of these questions. Thoughts on that?
Yeah. City
Major goal. So this form would be completed by city manager. Major goals, objectives, challenges during rating period, greatest accomplishments, employees' overall self-evaluation of performance, development plans and areas targeted for improved performance, recommended major goals and objectives for next year, and then how can your mayor and council assist you in your job success and enjoyment. So we'll be able to get, he filled this out in 19, and I would like to be able to at least have you all have a copy of that to look at that as well, to see where how he's grown, you know, and how he's succeeded or not. So thoughts on that?
So the city manager, if I may, the city manager form, input form, is this for what he's accomplished or what he's hoping to accomplish in the going forward? Which way is it?
It's accomplishments, and it also provides him an opportunity to set some goals.
Oh, okay. All in one package, right?
Yeah,
Okay, all right, thank you.
and I'll make sure that everybody gets a copy of that.
Mhm.
And you too, Andy. Absolutely. So how are you all feeling about using this input form in conjunction with this Exhibit B?
Yes, yes.
That's fine. It's appropriate.
Okay. So in order to move forward on this topic, we actually have to adopt Resolution 2171 using this criteria that we just talked about. So,
I'll go ahead and make a motion.
thank you.
I'll move to adopt resolution number 2171 to select Plan B as the city manager evaluation tool with the added input form from the city manager self-assessment that's in the packet.
I will second that.
All right, we have a motion on the table by Councillor Sheldon, seconded by Councillor Phage. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you for that dialogue and the conversation on that. Really appreciate that. And I will make sure that you all get copies pretty soon. Timeline for his evaluation and executive session. It would be nice to be able to have this buttoned up by March 1st. So that would give us, you know, time in February to do the evaluation, get the information back to the city attorney to have her compile everything, and then set up an executive session, maybe the second meeting in February. Andy, you know, I know February is looking pretty full, but does an executive session, second meeting in February sound okay? Or do we need to have a separate one?
Trying to look for what we're gonna have. I know we're gonna have a code update from the planning commission. Yeah, I would just need to game that out. It is a busy month.
Yeah, we can discuss that offline and come up with a time frame on that one, if that works. Okay. I know we're running a little late, but we're in the home stretch. So let's look at so no new business, unfinished business, and then manager reports. Andy.
All right, well, I'll be quick. And thanks to you all for having a thoughtful conversation just in that last item, and I appreciate that. And Councilor Pavin and Dage with taking into account what had happened before and trying to make it, you know, fair to me. And I don't consider moving in a new direction unfair. I think a lot of the criteria overlap in the sort of the same objectives. So anyway, thanks for that conversation. So we had a bit of COVID in our staff. We've had a couple of staff members, a few staff members tested positive over the last week and a half. Some different folks in households, including mine. So people have just been, you know, doing the isolating and quarantining, and we have a return to work policy, and everyone's just been following those protocols. It's been fine. Thankfully, everyone's symptoms have been okay, and everyone's healthy. we did order some tests, the city for employees, and they're hopefully going to arrive tomorrow, but it's tough to come by tests and no employees were able to find any. So we put in a bulk order and just waiting on those to arrive for employees to use. I guess the one thing I will note here is we had, you know, a bit of an effort trying to find a goal setting retreat date. So the mayor and I had discussed doing that on the evening of March 7th in lieu of the city council meeting. And I've spoken to a facilitator and she's fine with doing that. You know, we could discuss how we want to structure that. Do we want to start a little bit earlier? Do some work, take a break for dinner. We could get, you know, get some dinner. Wherever we're doing that, hopefully in person at Jessie Mays at that point, and then continue with the retreat after that. Those are some of the details that we can work out, but I think it would be good to at least know if that is something that the council would be willing to entertain, willing to do. I think we'd want to commit to, you know, that could be a 4-hour night, if that's why we'd schedule in some breaks, have some food there too, that we can keep our spirits up and motivated. But anyway, the facilitator said that she has done that sort of structure before in an evening meeting with the council, so she's familiar with doing that. It's just a matter of do we want to do that?
Is she able to start at 3 or 4?
I think so, yeah.
Cool.
I'm good with 3 o'clock.
Me too.
Earlier than that would be a little rough with my schedule, but I can make it work. Certainly be there by 3. Is this Jessie Mays? Is Pumpkin Ridge? Where are you thinking about having this?
I think Jessie Mays. But that's, we can discuss it. We could, frankly, we could do either one. If we had any members that wouldn't be able to attend, we could do Jessie Mays for sure and just try to zoom someone in for that time. But March 7th is good because it's a regularly scheduled meeting and hopefully that works for everyone's schedules. People are held captive already.
Last time we had a big old package to fill out to get our personalities and whatnot. We're gonna have the same thing again.
No, I don't think your personality's changed that much. But
I become softer, I guess.
maybe so.
Oh, I don't know about that.
We did discuss that Councilor Papen was not there for that and did not fill that out, so she could. And but
Might be the only one.
yeah, we might entertain doing that, but I think it would still involve, you know, conversations with the facilitator, you know, half an hour or so ahead of the meeting, just so she knows what's on everybody's mind, you know, what the topics of discussion are, what's important to the community these days, and that would really help structure how that meeting would go.
I'm gonna go ahead and go on the add on the limb and say I will buy dinner for everybody. If everybody likes pizza or King Torta, just figure it out. I'll buy it.
Oh, Pastor Page, that's something nice of you.
I know, right? I'm nicer.
Yeah, you're a
I
nice
still saying
guy.
that.
You're a nice guy.
Softer.
You are softening up.
Softer, yeah.
You are softening up.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So just let me know, shake, nod of the head, or mayor, if you want to get a voice vote, but then I'll get to work this week with the facilitator on that, if that's what works.
Well, this has been like herding cats, and we had to finally, you know, put the gavel down and make a decision on this. So thumbs up, everyone. And if for any reason you can't make it, we'll Zoom you in, okay?
Do you want me to suggest a start time of 3 p.m.?
Oh, if you can't make it, you have to buy dinner. There you go.
Right.
Yeah. There you go. There
Does
you
3
go.
o'clock, does 3 o'clock work for most everyone? I think.
I'm going to go out on a limb here and just double check. Is this a 4-hour meeting?
It could be.
That's totally fine.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's definitely in lieu of the city council meeting. So we thought if we could start at 3 o'clock, 3, 4, 5, 6, you know, and try to wrap it up by 7, 8 at the, 8 at the latest, you know, but.
Yeah. And that's why I was actually thinking if we could do 4 o'clock as well, because I'm thinking about Counselor Martinez, who's not here right now. And I know that the school day generally ends at 3 o'clock, and I don't want to speak on her behalf, but I know that my work day on Monday is always a meeting up until 3 o'clock as well. And so if we have to do 3, totally okay. But I'm just chiming in for 4 o'clock, just knowing that we would still be out by 8 o'clock, which would be an early into a city council meeting on a normal night.
Yeah.
And
Okay,
I
4 o'clock
think
it is.
Councilor Martinez said earlier works for her. So
Oh,
3
We
o'clock,
can-
and I
we
can
can
confirm,
agree.
I can confirm that with her. Okay.
As long as we have the contours of what we want to do, we have the evening, we're just kind of shifted by an hour or so, we're good.
Yeah.
I can get to work there, and we can determine later if we want to do
Yep.
3 or 4. That's not a big deal.
And definitely food involved to keep our brains moving and being active. So,
All right, cool.
all right.
That's great.
Um,
Well, Mayor, there's other bad news about your state of the city. I talked to TDC, and so. It's another
Well,
schedule.
and I spoke with Cindy Hurst, and actually the chamber board meeting is on the 29th. So we might have to do the state of the city then on the 30th. Right
Okay.
now, I don't have anything, so we'll just do it on Wednesday. So either I'm going to talk to Cindy and just see how we can either do, you know, do daytime or evening. And I know it would be fun. It would be nice to have it in the evening because we could really pull maybe some more constituents in or folks that could be able to watch it, you know, virtually, because we'll also have it streaming. So I like, you know, any additional thoughts on that? Do any of you counselors have a preference? Do you care? Nope.
no, what works for you?
Okay. So I think we should shoot for the 30th, Andy, and see if TVC TV can do the 30th then.
Okay.
Okay.
As for the rest, it's all there. I think in February, and I know the Planning Commission, they've been doing a lot of work with the development code. And they'd like to have a joint work session with the council. City council themselves are going to have at least one work session, so we may do it before the Planning Commission meeting, which would be February. I think that's. Well, actually, I have that
It's
February
the
9th.
9th, February 9th.
February 9th. Some of this is in relation to the UGB. Some of this is in relation to kind of going through some of the different measures for just really exploring the development code and the housing code before the UGB expansion happens. So that's what a lot of these changes are related to. I think getting things where we want them. We're past 9, Madam Mayor. I'll just, if anyone has any questions about what's written down there, I'm happy to answer.
Okay. Any burning questions? Okay. Just real quick, 2 things. Commissioner Jerry Willey is having a coffee at Hitchin Post this Saturday from 10 to 11. Hopefully you got an invitation in your email if you're free. Probably not a bad idea to go get an update from him. You'll have an active audience as well. Secondly, the Oregon Mayors Association has a student contest that been kicking it off. I've been talking to the local students, 5th and 6th graders, and I've already gotten about 10 people saying they want to participate. A couple years ago when we did the contest, we didn't have anyone submit last year, but couple of years ago, we had a submission and the contest, we had a local contest. And then after the local contest, whoever won the local contest, those submissions went to the state. The prize was $50 per category. So 4th and 5th would be a category, 6th, 7th, and 8th would be a category, and 9th through 12th is a category. $50 a piece locally, then the winners would go to state. If they win at state, they have a chance to win between $100, $300, and $500. So there's a lot of interest already. And I've only been at North Plains Elementary School. I haven't been out to Ephelati yet, but I'm planning on that as well. And then I've had a few other folks chime in as well. So I hope you all are okay with a $50 price, $50 gift card for the winner. If you have any major reservations, please reach out to me and let me know. But that's what I think we're going to go with, just what we've done before. Any other council reports? Anything burning?
Councilor, Madam Mayor,
Yes, sir.
yes, today went to OHSU. This is a side bit here. I left my cell phone in my car and rode the tram down. Come to find out it was a virtual meeting, so I had to come back home from there. I know I drove in for nothing. But anyway, coming up the tram with no phone in my pocket, in 5 minutes, with 20 people on that tram, I could have dropped the pin and heard it fall. It was so quiet in that thing. Everybody had their phone on but me, because I didn't have one. So I just barely could hold it in. I was about ready to say, hooray! I should have, but I didn't. So they couldn't have kicked me off. So it was fun. It was very interesting 5 minutes. So thank you for the good meeting.
All right. Anyone else before we say goodnight?
I'll just mention one thing there. I may need to trade, which I could talk offline with Councilor Kendall. The Planning Commission on 2/2, 3/9 is a perfect date, but in another capacity, I have a visit from a grand officer who's coming, and so I will not be able to attend 2 meetings at the same time on 3/9. So maybe if I would take 2/9, if you would take 3/9, that'll work.
Okay, I'll take 3/9 instead of 2/9.
Okay.
That'll work? Good, I'll do it. I'll mark it in my book right now.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right. And one other thing that I'm really surprised that Blake did not mention, but the Veterans Park is up for another award. And Kittleson and Associates interviewed me and Andy and Blake about that. So looks like we might be getting another award for the Veterans Park. So maybe Blake can email all of us, or Andy, maybe you can have him just email us once he gets the information. That would be awesome. Okay.
Yeah, when the video comes out, we'll definitely share it.
Sounds good. So, all right. Going once, going twice. Thanks for hanging in there this late. Hope you all stay safe. And Councilor Fage, hope you're feeling better.
Yep.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and close the city council meeting then at 9:14.